Thank you everyone for joining. This is Emend, the Mass Media Group. I hope everyone is doing well. We're here today to speak with Friday Jones, and we're going to have a great reparations discussion and conversation. So let's go ahead and pull Miss Friday Jones up. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're having a not rainy day in Southern California, so it's it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and it's always a good time when I'm with you, Umoya.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining. You could have been doing anything else at this particular time, but you're on here on this platform to give the people some great information today. So, before we get into the discussion, can you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I am Friday Jones, and my name is Kansa Jones Muhammad. The Real Friday Jones is a book that I wrote some years ago, and it is a personal memoir. And I was born on a Friday, and I'm just sharing that little story because people often ask, where does the name Friday come from? I was actually born on a Friday. And so when I wrote my memoir, I thought that made sense. And so on social media, all social media, I am Friday Jones. But in real life, I actually am a commissioner for the city of Los Angeles and their Reparations Advisory Commission, and I'm the vice chair of that organization. I also am the president and co-facilitator of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, and we are a national reparations organization pushing for compensatory reparations from our federal government. So I wear quite a few different hats.
All right. Well, since you mentioned the book, I was actually going to talk about the book later on in our discussion, but just real quick, I'm just curious, why the book? Why did you decide to publish the book that you did?
My response to that is I have lived a life and I have known that the world can be a cruel place from the age of 6 years old. And with that knowledge, some of the things that we're seeing kind of happening in mainstream media around the 1990s, some of the sexual abuse that has been alleged against different people, those experiences are real, and people grow up and people grow stronger in their power. And for me, I needed to write that book to just deal with everything from childhood bullying, child molestation, um, moving, due to circumstance a lot, and just constantly being in new situations. And the response that I get from people often who know me is, my God, I never knew that was your life. And for people that have experienced similar traumas, it has been a way for them to release and a way for them to start talking about those traumas in a way where they can start to heal. And for me, even from the dedications that I make in the book, from my children to other children around the world, it's important that people find a way to heal. And even the work we do as reparationists is about healing our traumas as a people, but also healing what is the trauma that has been the United States, to make actually this world a better place. And I do think as reparationists, we have an opportunity to do just that.
Boom. All right. So let's start getting into it. Do you want to quickly talk about this study here called blackexperiencela.com, if you don't mind?
Yes, and we need 4,000 people, so be one of the 4,000. That makes me think of the show The 100, which I was such a fan of, but be one of the 4,000. Sounds very sci-fi, but it's real life. The city of Los Angeles and our academic partner, which is CSUN, Cal State University at Northridge, has prepared this Black Experience LA survey for us. And you can use the QR code there, or you can go directly to blackexperiencela.com to take the survey. It will take you about 20 minutes, but we are effectively trying to assess over 3 time periods the harms that the city of LA itself may have perpetuated against Black people. And in order for us to sort of get that feedback, the survey is broken up into 1865 to 1925, which predates the city of Los Angeles, 1925 to 1968, which is the period that the city was chartered in 1925 through 1968. The last civil rights bill and housing was drafted, and then 1968 to present. There are some folks here in Los Angeles that are multi-generational. And this survey really does a good job about addressing sort of their harm over time. But from whatever point that you enter the city of LA, we are looking to hear about your experiences. And it is not just open to people currently living in the city of Los Angeles. My children's grandparents were from Texas. They have since, one is deceased, but they have since moved back to Texas. And so I sent it to the family that moved out of LA, because at one point in time they did live in the city of LA. And this, we know there was a large push to folks moving out east, out to Ontario and out that way. And so if people at some point left the city, and maybe they left because of lack of work or the inability to find affordable housing, whatever the case is, there's an opportunity to answer those questions on this survey.
And how long will this survey be available?
It is going to go through December. December will be the last big push, and that's why I was so glad when you reached out. I was like, yeah, we're doing a couple of things in December, and one of them is wrapping up the survey so that CSUN can actually report on their findings. And so this survey will be up until the end of December.
Gotcha. Okay. So everyone, if you've had or lived in Los Angeles, please go and check out this survey. You can go hit that QR code. Is that right?
QR code, or they can go to blackexperiencela.com.
All right. And it looks like there's an email and a number there too, right? At the bottom.
Yes.
Was that just if they have any questions or anything on it?
Yeah, no. So if there are any questions, so our what do you call it? Our oh my gosh, I'm trying to get to the right screen so I can get the right information. Our commission falls under LA Civil and Human Rights Department. And so that Civil and Human Rights Department actually has its own email and its own phone number, so that if people do have questions or if people have comments, if they want to give feedback, they can leave it. The phone number is 213-978-1845. And the email for the department is LACR, so Los Angeles Civil Rights -reparations with an S at lacity.org. And people can always stay in touch with the commission through that main phone number and that main email.
Wonderful. All right, so let's go to this flyer. You want to mention this?
So December, like I said, is a big month. And so we've had a couple of public facing events thus far. The first one was at CAM. I did an event with California Black Women's Health Network, which was public facing on genealogy. And so this is one of our third public facing events at Charles Drew University, December 2nd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And what we did, or what we are wanting to do, one, we want the public to come out and to give public comment. We also want to leave a little time and space for people to complete the survey live while they're here at this particular event. And we have invited Kevin Mejia, which is the city's controller. He spoke about funds that had just been left dormant in the city of LA. And so I want him to report not just to us as a commission, but to the constituency of the city of Los Angeles, to talk about what funds are available, I want to ask questions like, so how does, this commission or any commission, if you will, tap into what are essentially untapped funds that are just sitting around the city? There has not been a fiscal commitment, but we know Stephen Bradford, when the state hearing was going on, said, hey, we could just allocate a percentage. I want to ask questions about the feasibility of such a thing. We have also invited, um, he is no longer, Mike Bonin is no longer in office, but there's legislation that came from the city council talking about delivering land back to underserved communities in California and in Los Angeles. This is Tongva land, the Tongva people. Um, LA has one of the larger indigenous populations in the country. And so I'd like some clarification. What does it mean to be, underserved? Tell us about this legislation. And again, is there land that is available to this particular commission that could be reassigned, for people who have been historically harmed directly by the city through the work that we are doing? And so we really want people to come. I've also asked downtown Crenshaw, we've asked downtown Crenshaw to come to talk about their experience in trying to put together a land trust. I want to see if that particular formula is something that the city could use, in our recommendation process. And so we've invited some very interesting people. We invited Dr. Anthony Samad from the Dimely, I think it's the Dimely Institute in South LA. They've just finished doing research on the county of Los Angeles, and we want to talk to him about the findings of that report and how Black people are faring in the county of LA, because it gives us insight into how they're faring in the city of LA. And so this really is an event that I think has been thoughtfully put together with speakers, who can talk about real things. And we hope that this information that comes out of this particular session will also inform the work that CSUN is doing, so that when they turn over information and report to us, we can put it together in a way that really is meaningful. So I'm very much looking forward to December 2nd at Charles Drew's University.
All right, and to mention that Charles R. Drew University is a historically Black college.
Yes.
University. So shout out to Charles R. Drew, the great ancestor
Yes.
in science, technology.
Science.
So,
I mean, anyone who sat long enough with the universe for the universe to tell them their secrets, we are
I
blessed
know,
to be
right?
able to be in this particular space.
Definitely. And is this also going to be streamed live, or is this just going to be an in-person meeting?
I believe it's going to be in person. When you tweet this out, I'll try to have an answer at that time, because I'm not 100% sure on whether or
Okay,
not it will be streamed.
gotcha. All right. Yeah, if it could be streamed, we definitely appreciate it. And we actually, if we have the opportunity, might stream it as well on here. But if not, and people are in Los Angeles, definitely go and attend December 2nd, 2023, at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yes,
Is that
10 a.m.
correct?
to 1 p.m. We're going to
All
get
right.
in fast and furious, and we're going to touch all the points.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so we can actually talk about what's going on with the Los Angeles Reparations Commission. So let me go and do that. All right. All right. So can you see my screen?
I can, and I see you have the
All right.
presentation that I typically give.
All right. Well, let's briefly go through this because I know you said it's about a 20-minute presentation. So
Yeah,
if we can
it's
condense
a
it a little
20-minute
bit.
presentation. Yeah, I want to go through it, but I think it's more important that people actually see this, because right, they can rewind, stop, pause, look at it kind of how they need to. But just to sort of give a rundown, the Black experience is what the work that we're doing is sort of being titled and called, and blackexperiencela.com is the website that's been put together by Our academic partner, which is again Cal State University at Northridge. We fall under LA Civil Rights, and I just want to acknowledge Attorney Capri Maddox, who is the general manager and director of that department. She has done very thoughtful work with her LA Civil Rights department that is now being mirrored in other parts of the country by other municipalities. So I just want to acknowledge her. And we are the Reparations Advisory Commission, impaneled by former Mayor Garcetti, and we will be reporting to Mayor Karen Bass when we go in. So you could go to the next slide.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so basically there are two parts of our work. The panel was impaneled again under former Mayor Garcetti, and right now we're in what is this part one, where we are trying to document the role that the city has played in the harms. That is the main point of the Black Experience LA survey. And then our second part is we are going to make recommendations to the mayor, a specific recommendation about a pilot program, and then we are going to make additional recommendations to city council about reparative efforts that they can do, very much like the 1-2 part of the state process. And so our process is very similar. Next slide. I work with some pretty amazing people. I am the vice chair of the org, and that's me in the top middle row. To my left is our chair, Commissioner Mike Lawson, and Mr. Lawson runs LA Urban League. To the right is our secretary, Mark Wilson. Below, we have the other commissioners. We have Kaisi, who is usually my road buddy when we go and talk to people, Dr. Vanderwood, Dr. Cheryl Harris, who is an attorney and an educator at UCLA's law school, and attorney Virgil Roberts. So we make up the 7-member panel Reparations Advisory Commission for the City of LA. Next slide. Our academic partner, again, we have CSUN. I love that CSUN has all these different schools working in conjunction with us, the Africana Studies, the Geography and Environmental Science, the Geospatial. I geeked out when I found out that they were going to be on board, because we can document in words and we can map and show visually the areas, the physical locations where people are today. We can do time changes in terms of the harm. And I think that particular work is important. We also have their Department of Criminology and Justice Studies all tied in. So we have a very, very good group of folks from CSUN as our academic partner. And then we have a development partner, Mockingbird Analytics. One of the things that we were asked to do in our from the mayor and in our bylaws, from Mayor Garcetti and in our bylaws, was to also see about how harms have been historically paid for, right? Show me the money. Where's the budget? How did the Holocaust victims, who paid for it and how? What was the source of the resources? The United States has done repair around radiation bombing. Who came up with the funds to pay to those families? We have September 11th. We have Japanese internment. Tell us about all of these experiences. Tell us about South Africa. Tell us about the UN standards and who pays for this stuff. And then we also, it was important for me to do some sort of landscape analysis to see, well, what foundations are doing what we would call reparations adjacent work. And that's what Mockingbird is going to be putting together for us. And I'm really looking forward to Mockingbird's landscape analysis. Next slide. Again, the city of LA was chartered in 1925. The areas that the study itself is going to cover mirror what happened in terms of the research at the state level, enslavement, racial terror, political disenfranchisement, housing, segregation, mental and physical health, the legal system. The thing to remember, though, next slide, please. The thing to remember is that governance matters. And there are things that the city is responsible for. There are things that the county is responsible. There are things the state are responsible for. But where we can uncover um, information. And I wish um, Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley was available. She has a conflict on December 2nd because she's done some research with USC on equity within the city. And I'm hoping that even though she is not available, I am hoping that um, the team or a member of the team from USC, and I haven't received confirmation, will be available at that December 2nd event to dive into the work. Some of this work has already been done, and I'm excited to see it and share it with the public. In terms of our timeline, we were very intentional in trailing the state. We know that legislation from the state task force from the AB 3121 Reparations Commission will be going into the 2024 fiscal calendar for the state of California, and it was important to us to trail into the 2025 fiscal calendar for the city of LA. And so we expect to wrap up our work in December of next year so that the recommendations will go into the fiscal calendar for 2025. Next slide. This is just the QR code. Again, you can go to blackexperiencela.com and actually look at our survey. There are focus groups that are happening. You can participate at the level that you desire. Next slide. This kind of goes into the different ways that people who may want to participate can. Obviously, there is the blackexperiencela.com website where you can take the survey. Please post and share, amongst your network and friends and family. If you are part of a sorority, if you have a church home, or, if you go to the mosque or temple, share it with the Black folks that are there so that we can get some accurate information. If you want us to hold a workshop, I actually take this on the road, as do the other commissioners. You can email, at the LACR-reparations at lacity.org, and we will come out and do that. You can volunteer, you can allow us to table at an event. We have a whole nother year of work to get through, and I try my best to make myself available, as do the other commissioners, to do this work. So that's how people can stay involved. So thanks for letting me walk through that. I hope that was fast enough, Umoya.
Yeah, that was well done, as usual. Friday, always doing it right on time. All right, so before I want to start, get into some state reparations discussions and go on to some national discussions. But before we do that, just a quick question: why Los Angeles? Why, first of all, do we even need a local reparations study at all, and in particular Los Angeles?
So here's the thing. California is absolutely leading the nation. And, San Francisco obviously published their recommendations and who their beneficiaries were going to be, I believe, before the state initiative was completed. We in LA purposely didn't want to do that. Los Angeles is one of the largest municipalities in the country. The state of California is one of the largest states in the union. It has, I think, either the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world as a standalone state. And so that means that in terms of how money comes down to municipalities, you want a municipality of this size to actually weigh in this municipal space. I personally am not a fan of municipal reparations efforts, but I do think that California, in conjunction with the work that the city is doing, will ultimately have a pretty good blueprint for other states and municipalities that might want to follow. We've been very thoughtful in our process. And so that's why I think, Los Angeles, I obviously, as a reparationist, a modern reparationist, I am more concerned about the federal effort. I also want us to be weary and mindful of the fact that when things have happened by state level, right? States' rights. We hear the states' rights thing. Typically, when that is asserted, it's asserted in the United States in a racist kind of way in terms of actual policy and state rights, and it is asserted in an inequitable way. And so, even though this is a municipal effort, it's very important to me in the work that the city of LA is doing. That and I know this is Capri Maddox also, that the work is being done to the highest standard. The work is being done in a way to be a model of how repair can be done. And it's important in that regard that it is LA. New York has two very different bills coming out, one of which was written by New York Assembly member Nikki Lucas. Nikki Lucas consulted with folks here in California, to make sure that New York was getting it right, to take into consideration some of the legal uh, knowledge that has come from Dean Erin Chemerinsky during the state effort. And it's important to me that people are mindful and thoughtful in that way. The competing bill by Assembly Member Solages didn't do that. And I think it's important when I want to, if other municipalities and states are going to come on board, I'm betting on the team that met with Dr. Shirley Weber. And Assembly Member Nikki Lucas met with Dr. Shirley Weber. So it's important, like you're asking why California or why Los Angeles, why New York. I think it's important for municipalities to not get on a pride thing, not get on a regional thing, and understand that this work really is ultimately leading up to the federal work. And so there has to be some sort of coordination. There has to be coalition. There has to be working together, because that is historically how we as a people have moved forward in this country.
All right. So let's go on to talk about some state legislation currently that's happening right
Yes.
now. We don't know what's going to happen in 2024, but currently SB 490. So for those who have been following what's going on right now in the California legislation, in particular, going on with ETN Media Group. Oftentimes um, on Sundays, usually we have our show, Road to Reparations, this community show that we host, usually every Sunday. Sometimes we do take a little break because I think, breaks are actually necessary. We actually go through legislation. We went through the Senate. Now we're on the Assembly. We have a couple more shows that we are going to be airing and possibly going live in 2023 coming up, and in 2024. And we're going to be continuing on doing the show until a reparations bill of some sort is passed. But let's, in particular, Friday, let's talk about SB 490, the bill that will establish the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. Can you please give us your thoughts on this bill and currently what's in the bill? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so I've spoken to Senator Bradford about this bill, and I'm so just proud of him. As a member on the task force, if you remember, he was a swinging vote. And this is my opinion. Let me say this. I don't want to speak in my capacity as a commissioner on what I think about this bill. So these are my personal thoughts and my personal opinions. So I'm very proud of Stephen Bradford, right? Senator Bradford was a swing vote for the lineage. I think he understood the importance of it, and the importance of it at the federal level. When I spoke to him about this, he said this was the first thing he wanted to get out, because without an infrastructure to manage reparations, to manage, how people are, without a government agency to manage how people are going to receive their benefits, to qualify people for the benefits, without the genealogy department, there's no way that the state can do this. And so Camila Moore, Chair Moore, wrote in terms of the recommendations, the American Freedmen's Bureau, or the idea of a Freedmen's Bureau, is what she wrote. And so for Senator Bradford to see the significance of it and to put it out, I'm very proud of him. I do understand that and I asked Isaac Bryant this, who is a member of the state legislature, like, where is the Congressional Black Caucus on this? And, he expressed that they were somewhat surprised that Bradford had put this out so soon. But I really hope, what he also said was that the Congressional Black Caucus members are looking at their strengths. He's someone who grew up in foster care, so he understands, that part of the recommendations. Some people are educators, so they understand the education. Some people were in medicine in some capacity, and so they were trying to divvy up the recommendations in a way that could play to the strengths of the authors. And I'm inclined to say, regardless of how they feel that he came out, I do think that in terms of legislators who are qualified, obviously Senator Bradford, and even though I don't agree always with Reggie Jones Sawyer, they are the legislators that sat on that commission, right? Who else should come out with something first? It's appropriate for him to. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he sees the value of the infrastructure. And I hope that his bill doesn't turn into political hockey. I hope that the remaining recommendations don't turn into, egotistical battles. 2024 is an election year, and I would hate to see, our legislative efforts fall to the wayside because people are going to play politics and are more concerned about their career than benefiting, the descendant people and the free Black folks who were here before the turn of the 19th century. So those are my thoughts.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because we do have to realize that Assembly Member Reginald Jones Sawyer and Senator Bradford were there the whole time. So they actually were in those halls. They were in the meeting, even if it's virtually, right? So they saw the experience, and they really got the feedback from the people, right?
Correct.
From the
in
community.
real time.
In real, like, people were in their face and they got to know the community, right? So they have that experience, and not, taking anything away from our other seat bill, the California Black Legislative, caucus at all. But when you're talking about this particular bill, you have to give credit where credit is due. I think obviously as we're going through this process, every legislator inside the Black Caucus and outside is very important. So, we can get this, what we're calling the 41-21 equals California reparations, 41 assembly, 21 senators, one governor equals California reparations, right? So that's the eventual goal. But I think even myself, I was actually quite shocked to see SB 490 at this particular time, which is actually great. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I think this is a good opportune time because, one of the things that's been going, and talked about is like, well, why can't they just do, an independent, Freedmen's Agency? Why can't we just put something together and so forth? I have my opinion on that, but Friday, why do we need to create this agency, right? Instead of doing independent.
Here's the thing, and I hope this makes sense for people. The Freedmen's Bureau was short-lived, right? It was a refugee agency. It was federally, was placed in the Department of War after the Civil War. But it was effective in the redress of grievances. We know that historically through our judicial system, which is the third branch of government, racism rears its head continuously. We don't get same judicial process. We get longer sentencing. If we die and a white person dies of the same thing, their life is worth more. So their families will get, $20 million and we'll get $1.5 million, right? This injustice kind of just has been part of the system. But when President Johnson dismantled the Freedmen's Bureau and he wrote his argument, one of the last things that he said is that if I am wrong and these Black folks do not receive full citizenship, do not receive fair treatment under the law, and they are not treated like the rest of our citizens, by a presidential action, the Freedmen's Bureau can be brought back. And in my capacity as the co-facilitator and the president of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, in 2020, when Biden won his election, we asked by presidential executive order for him to bring it back. And so for this to be the first thing in terms of legislation in the state of California, I saw you posted the picture of the Freedmen's Bank. The Freedmen's Bank is another area where there was no FDIC because of racism. The management of the bank was all white up until Frederick Douglass was asked to come in and save the sinking ship. And the only thing that people could invest in, and remember, most of the depositors were people who had served in the Civil War, Black Union soldiers. And it was their pension. The United States government gave them their pension. They took their pension, invested it in this bank. The United States government said, we're not going to FDIC insure you. You can only invest in T-bills, which means that we invested in this nation, right? They sold T-bills to people and had interest or whatever. The only thing you could buy and invest in was T-bills and whatever the management approved, which was often their private ventures. And so there was a lot of financial loss due to the mismanagement because the Negroes were not allowed to manage themselves, right? And so there was mismanagement, and then there was bad record keeping to add to the insult. $2 million, which I think is worth about $86 million today, was just removed, never given back. And so now we have these initiatives. If you've been following the Freedmen Bank conversation for the past couple of years, there was this whole move for underserved minority businesses. Underserved minority businesses are not who finance the Freedmen's Bank. Underserved minority businesses are not who had their pensions stolen. Underserved minority businesses are not who heavily invested in the United States by buying T-bills at a time when, there was bankruptcy after the Civil War for this country. And so we have to start talking about these things in a meaningful way. And again, that for me personally, I love the fact that Senator Bradford came out swinging with, let's do this infrastructure. And I think even if HR 40, which has been around since my whole adult years, even if that doesn't happen, what the next president of the United States could do? They could do an executive order to bring the Freedmen's Bureau back. So I'm very proud of this legislation, and I'm here to champion it as best as I can as an individual here in this good old state of California.
Well, and just to clarify, I don't know if you said, I know you said Johnson, but you're talking about Andrew Johnson.
Yeah, isn't that the president who?
You said Johnson, so I was just like, just wanted to make sure it was Andrew Johnson, because I think he was the one who reneged on the whole like Freedmen,
yes,
bank and so forth.
Yes, he did. It was Andrew Johnson. It was deplorable.
Yeah.
I mean, and people should read it. People should, that's the beauty and understanding history. People think, oh, well, they don't know. They're not going to ask for a presidential action. Yes, we did, and we will again. Absolutely. Because that's where the power lies. And they knew when they took it away. He knew when he took it away. He could have bought it back. But he wasn't going to bring it back because Black people were actually getting redress. People don't know the reason the United States doesn't have uniform medical care is because The white schools and institutions did not want to be graduating Black doctors. And so freedmen hospitals were created, and Black people were getting proper medical care, proper nursing care during that time. And they didn't want to pay for the Black hospitals and care under a universal national plan. And so we are arguing Democrats and Republicans when we should be arguing racism. And all the white people who think they don't want reparations, yeah, you want reparations, because under the undermining of our medical system due to racism, you know what you would get out of the deal? You would actually get universal medical care.
All right. Well, thank you for that wonderful discussion. Let's move on, shall we?
I mean, history and politics, like reparations is everything. I've been saying that in a hashtag lately. Reparations is everything. Reparations is everything for people who think they know everything. You don't know everything because you haven't taken it back to the source. And most things in these here United States lead back to slavery and what was done after slavery. And people don't know the name William, it's Congressman, I think his name is William Levy. He brokered the Compromise of 1870 that took the U.S. Marshals up out of the South and set Black folks back 100 years. We need to know these people. We need to know who they are and how they destroyed lives with policy so that we can rebuild life through policy.
Absolutely. So speaking of policy, right here in Emend the Mass Media Group, if people haven't seen it and they're interested in seeing it, we did cover one, and I think this might be more that might be happening. So if we can cover it, we will try. We're a very small platform here, so we try to do what we can. But we did cover the U.S. Census Bureau workshop on advancing research on race, ethnicity, and inequality. And I know earlier, I think it was this year, I want to say it was this year, the OMB actually wanted some feedback from the community. And I believe Friday, you were and are aware of, because I think you even, and please correct me, I think you even spoke on some of the Indian Bureau affairs at that particular time, right? I think so.
Yeah, I took a little flack for that. I took some flack for that. Look, I got people calling me Pocahontas and all kinds of craziness. You can't even be proud of your heritage without like somebody being mad at you. But I have said this from day one. Like, I for real legit know who I am, from the Irish people that left Ireland, fought in the Revolutionary War, and within 2 generations became slave-owning farmers in the South fighting for the Confederates. Like, that's how well I know my family history, down to the importation of my great-grandmother Tracy 7 generations back. Her bill of sale says that she was from the Congo. That's real, and that's as real as my Shinnecock Nation family up there in the Hamptons, in New York. And the current chiefs, I believe, are Millers, and my great grandfather was Jahu Miller. So I'm not a card carrying member of the Shinnecock Nation. That don't change who my great grandfather was 7 generations back. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I showed up at an NAASD. We wrote a formal recommendation to go with African American, and we felt that it was important to do that so as not to commingle American freedmen with a race or ethnicity, because we haven't achieved being a protected class. And it's important for us to be a protected class and to have political status in the same way that indigenous people do. Whether we want to be a sovereign nation or not is something I think there should be room made during whatever reparations process to kind of weigh the pros and cons of that. But I also attended the hearing for the indigenous people, which in my opinion was a lot more thoughtful. because it allowed anyone in attendance to speak, to ask questions when they wanted to ask questions. And, I said, even for indigenous people, there needs to be some sort of record for like Black folks who are essentially out of treaty, right? In order to be recognized as indigenous and out of treaty, particularly when like who your people are. There are there people don't want to talk about that, but the whole blood quantum thing is math. When the United States made the recommendation for blood quantum in these treaties, mathematically, over time, y'all people are going to divide yourselves out. It's that there's no difference in that in Ayers laws. We know the Ayers laws down south because Ayers laws were made it so that people really couldn't transfer uh, title to their property if they died without a trust, right? Black folks didn't have legal money to go get trusts even 100, 200 years ago. Oh, so if you die and you got 10 kids, okay, all your 10 kids and then all they 10 kids, you already had 100 people owning the same little half acre of property, in some cases 400 acres of property. But what we saw through Bruce's Beach is that air stuff becomes real tough. And down south, one person want to sell, the other people don't want to sell, everybody's losing their house. So blood quantum, Ayers property have mathematical similarities to them. And so I hopped in there and was like, yeah, y'all need to consider that, because there's a lot of us Black folks who are mixed in there some kind of way, one way or another. And there should be some relief for that also. I don't, in reparations space talk about that. I don't spend a lot of my days with that, but I'm also not going to leave an opportunity as a citizen of these here United States and not talk truth to power. Truth to power is what it is. My Irish people who fought in the Revolutionary War so we could be a country, they was also Confederates. The truth to power, it is what it is. And it allows you to speak, with conviction and grace. And that was what I tried to do during that session. I was very proud, even though people were calling, with different names for Black folks, whether they went American freedmen, African American, Black, some people just wanted to be Black American, whatever it is, the overwhelming demand with the census was that there are Black people you have not been thoughtful with over time. We in this era don't carry the shame of our great grandparents, with some of the atrocities that they survived through, particularly down south. And it's time for you to come up with a category for us that is our own, not some one size fits all, because this is a racist country. And it's very important that we continue that work. NAASD met with the Department of Treasury Director of Economic Policy, Janice Bodler. I think that's how you say her last name, Bowdler, with our recommendations on, what that Freedmen Bank needs to make available, including a fund, even if they start the fund with the equivalent of the $2 million that was just taken, from depositors back in the day. If it's worth 86 million, round it up to $100 million and make that specific for the descendants of persons who were enslaved in the United States. Make it specific for, people who didn't get that GI Bill money. Make it specific, make it have some meaning and some teeth when it comes to housing and starting new businesses. 100 million is not a huge number in terms of infusing into us, but to have that kind of set aside that specifically repairs a harm, I think is important. And I think Janice Bodler, she had a team of people on that meeting. If it is meaningful, the Department of Treasury and the Census Bureau need to talk to each other. And they need to be having conversations around identity and around set asides for the original marginalized community. And we were it.
All right, so that's a good segue into possibly our last topic today, the Freedmen's Bank Forum 2023, right here on Emend the Mass Media Group. We did cover it
Y'all did such
covered
a
this.
good job. I tell you this, nothing like an ETM party. I was at
It
I
ain't.
was at the coverage, and the comments, it's like
Coles was on fire,
the
man.
comments were on fire. And I know there are some people. First of all, let me tell y'all, we an invitation came from the Department of Treasury, I think on the 16th. That thing I think was on the 19th, or we needed to RSVP by the 19th, and then the thing was just, it was a very short window, right? Which means you didn't really want us there to begin with. They opened, I remember they opened, it was a black man who was like the former, I don't know, whatever his title was at the Department of Treasury. I did look him up at the time because it was like, why is this guy opening the thing? So the black guy opens the thing. You got a few different multi-ethnic people. You had the second panel, I think an Asian woman moderated, and then you had the third panel, which was like this all black kind of panel. I think the optics of that were horrible, right? I think that if you are going to talk about the Freedmen's Bank, you put black people first. You put black Americans first. You talk about our issues first, and then you get to, kind of everything else. I thought it was very disturbing and troubling that there was not, again, legislation specific, even in terms of lending. There was a East Asian guy, and I forget his name. I don't remember anyone's names. I just remember the people on the panel. But there's an East Indian guy talking about a fund of East Indian people that helped East Indian people like migrate to the United States. Tech is huge in India. We know that tech invests significantly in India. I want to understand why our big tech companies that are here in the United States don't have that kind of rural investment in Mississippi on the Delta, don't have that kind of rural investment down in Alabama, the little tiny town that my folks come from in North Carolina, that have a quote unquote drug corner and epidemic because it's a sleepy little town. Why aren't the investments that are being made in a foreign country being made down south? And then this guy, he's running this fund. You're running a fund like based on the premise of the Freedmen's Bank. And I'm like, do you even understand the history of the bank? Why don't you and your fund have 10% set asides again for the descendants of people enslaved in the United States? But you're getting funding from that Freedmen's Bank, and you have other East Indian people who are pooling their funds in order to foster further immigration into the United States. So you're creating a lifeline in the chain. And my only question is, well, where is the lifeline in the chain for the people down south, because their work has been replaced by John Deere's, because they're not manual laborers out in the fields anymore? Where is their lifeline? There was no commitment. It felt like to me there was no real commitment from anyone, including that Department of Treasury, to earmark funds for the people who created the Freedmen's Bank, for our ancestors. My mom said something about going to a freedmen's school. That was something they did, I guess, on Saturdays or something like that. Where's our investment? And you just didn't see it. And so I think in that regard, it's tone deaf. Hopefully, I've tried to circle back to Janice Bodler. Hopefully, we will hear from her. But there's work to be done. There's reparative work to be done. And, I'm happy to do it in my capacity as the president of NAASD. And when it comes to the city of Los Angeles and the work that needs to be done for past harms by the city of LA, I'm happy to stand in my capacity with the Los Angeles Reparations Advisory Commission. So,
All right, wonderful. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty much what we wanted to, talk about today, because we are coming up on the hour. And every time Friday, we have these wonderful conversations. So once again, I always appreciate you. We could probably be on here for about 5 hours, going back and forth, chopping it up. But we know that we have stuff to do in our own personal lives. And people who are going to be watching this are going to be probably like, yeah, I appreciate it. But like, that's why I try to get stuff done within an hour. But as always, you bring the fire, you bring that critical information, and that's why I personally am in the mass media. Always appreciate you. And by the way, if you haven't seen the documentary, Reparations Now doc.com, that's reparationsnow.com. This is lineage based focus, and we do have our wonderful advocate here, Friday Jones, in the building. And unfortunately, we couldn't put everything in the documentary, and we had to truncate the interview that we did with you, Marcus, and Chad. So it was very limited in scope, unfortunately, but we're going to be putting additional footage on repnow.com. So if you guys want to see that, we're going to be doing that throughout the year, because I think it's very good information, and you're supporting our platform and what we're doing. And, it's not going to cost that much to support it. But yeah, if anybody does want to see that additional information, that interview we did with Chad, Marcus, and Friday, we're going to be posting that on Rep. I got to go back to it because, a lot going on in my brain. Reparationsnow.com. That's reparationsnow.com. Yes.
My final words, I just want to, I believe in giving flowers in real time. You and Kim, thank you so much for ETM Media. It's very important that we have our own media voices, and you all are one of the strongest. Your coverage of the AB 3121 hearings, you're making space for different reparations conversations, all the coverage that you do in Northern Cali around reparations in partnership with CJEC. You guys are up there with, those civil rights photojournalists. And when we look back 20 years from now, I know that you two will just be like icons in this space because of all the work and the coverage that you have done. And so I just want to thank you. I know it's not easy at times. I know you got to deal at times with different people and different personalities, and yet you all persevere. And so I just want to say I'm a fan. I check in because there's no party still like a ETM party because the chats be off the
Yeah.
chains. And so thank
Lit.
you so much for the coverage and the work that you all have consistently done in this modern reparations movement.
Appreciate that, Friday. Coming from you, especially, we always appreciate, and we appreciate everybody who tunes in, because I think we feel that, what we're doing is hopefully community based, and we want people to have a voice, even if personally we may not agree with what they're coming. We let people, I mean, obviously, if you cussing and all that other stuff, and you saying some crazy trollish stuff, we might have to block you. But like outside of that, I mean, you can express yourself. I mean, even if it's contradictory to reparations, we give people that space to talk, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what journalism should be about. That's what media should be about. And also, I mean, I know there's like a lot of YouTubers on here and doing it, and Kim and I, we could get sensational with our platform, but we try to give information as is, right? Regardless if it's boring, regardless if you don't want to learn it, regardless if whatever is happening in the world right now. Sometimes you just got to give it plain. And if that means, for example, which I'm eventually going to read this, the 1866 Reconstruction Treaties between the United States and Oklahoma tribes. Eventually, we'll be reading that because that's actually very important too, because there's a lot of conversation going on right now about what's happening, who's doing what, between the tribes and reparations, etc. So we're going to eventually read it. It's actually pretty extensive. It's actually more extensive. So that's why I've kind of been holding off reading it than what it is. But
I've been
we got
saying
to get
since
into it.
2019, we need to dive into them treaties. So I'm here
We
for
do.
it. I'm glad. See, y'all are, yes, I've been saying that since 2019 because there's a lot to be uncovered there. And I'm glad you're here for that work.
Yeah, and there's some information that I'm getting from my dad that we may have some Native American ties somewhere in Oklahoma ourselves. So, and I'd even know. I was just like, oh, really? So, I mean, you just never know. I mean, we go so far back in this country, and we built this country, right? Our ancestors worked hard, for this, and there's actually a video that I'm going to post. I can't post it on here because unfortunately, um, YouTube it you won't it'll be copyright infringement. But there's something. There's a movie that I saw yesterday called Killing Them Softly. Have you seen
Mm.
that movie, Killing Them Softly? Okay, it's with Brad Pitt, and I can't remember the dude who played in The Sopranos. Um, but they're in that movie. And so throughout the movie, um, you have George Bush. I think this came out, I want to say it was like 2000, don't quote me, 2000, like 15, 2017 ish, somewhere around there. Um, but the premise is Brad Pitt's character basically he was trying to off all these people that was doing some grimy stuff, right, in the mafia. And so, but throughout the film, they were showing George Bush, predominantly George Bush Jr. and Obama, right? They like
Mhm.
various scenes, would come up. They show them on TV saying these speeches. But one of the speeches, Obama was talking about how he was, for the community. This should be about the community. And then there was at the end, there was a bar scene where the person who hired uh, Brad Pitt's character, when they were talking about money, and when he approached the person, and I think he may have been working with the mafia or some politicians or whatever to off these people. But when Brad Pitt's character, the one who was hired, the mercenary, to basically you know off these people, uh, Obama's speech came on TV at the bar, and then um, the the person who hired Brad Pitt's character was like, "Hey, you should listen to Obama talking about community and so forth." But Brad Pitt was like, "Look, America's a business, right?" And so he goes into Thomas Jefferson and how he owned slaves and all this other stuff, and he's talking about we the people. And basically, to sum it up, he's like he's hypocritical. So miss me with all that stuff, right? So he was just like, "Look, straight up, pay me." He said, "Well, I can't do this and all this other stuff because I have to, this is person and we got to cut you. We can't pay you as much." So anyway, Brad Pitt was like, "I don't give a damn. America's is a business, so pay me." So that's basically the part that I'm gonna cut up and probably put on Twitter, because people have to really take this reparations as a business, right? You have to take this seriously, because if you don't, people take business serious, right? And if you don't take reparations, what's owed to you, as serious, then other people aren't going to take you serious. So anyway, I'm gonna end
Reparations
on
is
that.
everything. You can end on that. That's a good one. Thank you so much, Moya.
Well, thank you, Friday. And once again, we're gonna post obviously everything that we talked about today. We're gonna post it. And everybody, if you have a chance, we're gonna drop some links on there. Go to the link. Support Friday. Speaking of that, Friday, before we're out, do you want to give people in your socials, people where people can reach out to you?
Oh yeah, at I am Friday Jones. Whether it's Instagram, TikTok, I don't really TikTok, but TikTok, Facebook, uh, you name it, X, Twitter. X is so weird. Twitter. I am Friday Jones on all those spaces.
All right.
Discord. I'm everywhere.
All right, wonderful. So if you want to reach out to Friday, please reach out to Friday once again. Friday, thank you for joining us on this wonderful Sunday. On that, ladies and gentlemen, you have a good and blessed one. Peace and reparations.